Hi guys, today I'm going to do something that probably not have seen before. We're going to learn Python very quickly using a cheat sheet. This is cheat sheet provided by quickref.me and it's pretty good. And I'm going to use this to teach you Python just like that. What are you waiting for? Let's begin. The name is Dr. Zishan. You're here first time. Don't forget to click subscribe so you get these tutorials regularly as I'm posting my Python and other language almost every week. So without further ado, let's begin. Now, if you're learning Python, you already should know. If you're not learning, then you need to download python.org's Python SDK. So what do? Head on to python.org, click on downloads and click on the latest version of Python. Install it. Windows or Mac doesn't really matter. It's just next, 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 next. Simple as that. Once you do, you can use PyCharm or VS Code to code the program. If not, you can use any other online editor. Let's get into Python. Once you have Python installed, the first thing we understand is hello world. How do you print a statement? Well, very simple. In order to print any output in Python, you need to write print, bracket start, bracket close, within inverted quotations, hello world, or any string. String is basically number, sequence of characters or collection of characters, alpha or numeric. So when you write print, it's a method. Bracket start indicates it's a bracket method. And then within this, you write any string. No matter what you write, you execute the code, the hello world gets printed. That's how you start Python. Congratulations, you begin your first code. Next, when you start working Python, you need to understand how to store the data. To do that, we use something called variables. Variables are a way of storing data in the memory and then using those variables to access the same data. Okay, as you cannot access the data directly. So what we do is we create something called age. Age is a variable. Okay, variable means a container. It stores your data in a memory, and then using this variable, you can access the same data from the memory. So when you create a variable, basically you are creating a container that is able to save this data in a memory. The variable names can be any name without any spaces or special characters like at the rate, minus, plus sign, multiply. Don't use them. Just use underscore if you want to. Okay. Name is equals to John. So now what we have given is we have given it a string. Again, the same one here, meaning that it is of type str representing a string. This 18 represents integer number. Simple as that. Number, any number form non-decimal values. Whole number or natural number are known as numbers. When you save them, they are called in programming integer numbers. And then you can use these variables to print as well. So instead of printing a whole string, you can pass this variable name here. What's happening is that we are using this name, variable name, which is referring to this value, which is actually now stored in a memory. So we are saying, hey, this is a variable container that contains a value. I want to print that value, and that value gets printed on the console. Simple as that. So this is how we use variables. Variables can be used for any purpose and multiple different purposes. Okay. We see hopefully in next what it tries to do. But first, let's understand the data types. In Python, there are various different data types. Data types represents the type of data you are using. In this example, this is number form, and this is integer form. String form. This is integer form. A string represents collection of characters in form of alphanumeric. Number is only number form. So str represents your string or what we call simple text. If you are using numeric numbers, you need integer. If you are using decimal numbers, you use float, and you can use something called complex for more scientific arithmetic calculations. Then there is something called sequence. This is again another type of data which represents lists, tuples, and range, which are basically known as generally as arrays or collection of data. Means the lists is able to store multiple data in a single container. String, integer, float, complex, they are able to store one data at a time in a container. If you want to store more data inside a container in a variable, you use either list, tuple, or range. Okay. Then we have something called dictionary. It's again a type of a sequence, but it has a one-to-one mapping, which is called key and value mapping. The examples will proceed later on. Similarly, we can use set and frozen set, another type of set of data. Boolean is a true and false variable, extremely important in conditional statements. It stores only either true or false. That's it. That's the whole purpose of this. Store true and false. Khalas. Then we have something called binary data, such as bytes, byte arrays, and memory arrays. We'll talk about this later on. So once you understand the data, okay, whatever data you're using in computer needs to be defined that the type it is so that it can be stored in the memory and the relevant memory space can be allocated to them. That's why understanding what type of data is important. But when we create the data or when we work with the Python, we don't need to specify directly which type of data I'm creating. Python actually understands most of this automatically. Understand? That's the beauty of Python. So if I create message hello world, this automatically becomes of type string or text. I don't need to specify this is a string because Python understands, hey, these are inverted quotations. This is supposed to be a string. Hey, this is an integer number because this is a whole number. If you use decimal values, it says, hey, it's a decimal value. It's supposed to be float. Exactly. So we just need to know that what type of data we are using, but actually Python also knows it itself. So you don't need to specify. Hence now, slicing the string. The string has many methods built inside it. When you work with the string, you can perform multiple different methods that work on those strings, such as in this example, slicing. So what we do is we created a variable called message, which is a container. It holds this value hello world. Then we say, listen, print message 2:5. What this going to do is it's going to start from the second index and then print the string up till fifth index. Hence the output is LLLO. Understand? This is how we print the data. So what's this doing is it's actually slicing the string and extracting a certain part of the string based on the index numbers. So this index starts from 0, 1, and 2. So that's why we start from L and then 4 and 5, okay, which is actually this comma. So this is an inclusive number. So 2, 3, 4, 3 characters are written. Fifth is the exclusive number. So fifth is not get. Fifth is actually this comma. So it always starts from 0 to a certain number. The starting number is inclusive, means it will start from that number up till the number below it. Okay, so it's like n minus 1 rule. So this is n minus 1. So whatever number we specify here, the index will always be minus 1 to it, which is, that's why we call it exclusive. Similarly, there are tons of other methods to upper, to lower, to change font, find index number, find values. There are so many methods that you can operate on in string within Python. I don't know whether we have this in or not, but probably we'll try to explore a few this in more other tutorials on this channel. So again, don't forget to subscribe. Let's move on to lists. What are lists or list type of data that we just discussed? Lists are a way of creating multiple data in a single container. Okay. So for example, we have my list. Again, we don't need to specify is equals to, we create square brackets. Due to these square brackets, this Python system knows, you're creating a list. These square brackets just represent a collection of multiple data. They are not data itself. Do be careful about that. Hence, we say, hey, I've created an empty list. Basically, this means. So we say my list dot append. Again, append is a method that is by default present in the Python system, which allows us to enter the data inside the list. So remember, list is a container, means it is able to hold multiple data. So when we say my list dot append, dot is a connection operator that connects the list with this method, and this method will execute certain operations, which is whatever value I provided within its parentheses, add that item inside this list, inside this container. My list dot append to, so whatever item I've added here, add this to the list. Simple. Now, in order to traverse and view all the items in the list, we use something called a loop. Probably talk about loops a little bit later on in this point, but basically loops are an iterative statements. They will continuously iterate and loop through our statements. They are like a cyclic statements. This statement only execute once. Halas. This statement will execute once and won't repeat itself. This statement will only repeat one time. Won't repeat itself. It will execute one time. However, looping statements will continue to cycle until a certain condition is met. In this case, we are saying for, again, as it's a reserved word keyword, item. Again, we declared our own new variable now. This is a new variable that I declared here. And we say in, again, a keyword. So it's called a for in loop. Okay, because we're saying, hey, for in my list. So we say, listen, actually I want you to go inside my list, read the first item and assign it to this item variable. This is how we basically try to interpret. So we automatically using this for loop in a coded way, telling that, listen, read my list, go inside it, get the first item and store it in item variable, or this can be any variable name. Then we just want to say print whatever is value has been stored here, print it. Next, it will automatically repeat itself. Then you say, hey, read the second item, assign it back to this variable. So override its previous value. Now it has the new value and go and print it. Then again, it will repeat third time and say, hey, go inside my list. But then it will say, listen, there is no more item in the list. And then say, okay, no more item. Fantastic. Let's exit. Alas. So it automatically understands how many times I have to repeat based on the number of items there are in your list. That's how intelligently Python works and the coding logic nowadays works. So this is going to print out 1 and 2. Okay, so whenever you need to have multiple items in a box, in a container in form of list, we always use a list data type. Wonderful. Let's move on further. Now we have something called if else. What are if else? If else are conditional statements in programming. They allow us to make a decision, a logical decision based on certain condition. If the condition is true, do this. If the condition is false, do that. That's it. So we say if the value of this number, again a variable we created with the 200 value, we say if the value of this number is greater than 0 colon, then print this statement. Else if this is false, else again colon, print this statement. So this becomes our simple if else structure in which we make a decision. If this condition is true, this is known as a condition because it is evaluating a relation. These are greater than sign, there's a less than sign, equal to sign, not equal to sign. This allows us to evaluate certain conditions. These conditions mark that if this condition is true, execute the if, and that's it, move out. But if this is false, then execute the else statement. Ignore this line, execute this, and then go out. Notice the structure of if, we write a condition without any brackets, and then we write a colon. Colon indicates that this statement is continuing depending on the condition is true or not. If it is true, go execute the print statement. And also note the print is indented. These indentation are extremely important in Python. You would notice this in for as well. These indentation indicate that this line is actually part of if. If you write the statement right below it, the code will give you error because it needs an indented statement. Similarly, if I write else, now else is again in line with if. And the statement that precedes the else is again indented. So that means that this statement is part of else. These indentation make a huge difference in your coding. So do always be very, very aware of it. Let's move on to loops. Loops are basically statements that repeat itself, just like for. Again, there are various different ways of writing it. There is different structure like while loop, for loop, do while loop. Here we are looking into a for in loop, just like this one. So we are saying, listen, for item, again a variable name, can be any name you want, in a keyword reserve word, range 6. So now we are using a built-in built-in function called range. What it's going to do is it's going to create a list of items with automatically having 6 range from 1 to 6. That's it. So we are creating a range of items from 1 to 6 automatically by using a function. So the first time it executes is going to create the range and then assign the first value to this item variable. Now inside the for, notice what we have done. We have created if statement. This if statement is done inside the for. So you can use if inside the for. You can use for loop inside the if, depending on how the logic proceeds. So what we're now doing is we're saying, listen, iterate through items from 1 to 6 because we have given it a range. Hey, range up till 6. So range is the built-in function. So it's going to read the first item, assign it to the item. Now we're saying if item is equals to 3. If the item is equal to 3, the value of item becomes 3. Means if when I reach to the third value, you do a break. Break means stop the execution flow of a loop, and it will break from here and just skip a loop. It's like skipping a hop. So this is going to just break and come back here and check the condition again. So first time it executes, the value will be 1 because range starts from 1. Assign it to the value item. It's going to assign it there. Then it's going to say, hey, if the item is equals to 3, because it has 1, the item is 3, condition becomes false. This break word is ignored. It's going to print that item. Then again, next time the 2 value is there, 2 is going to assign here, is going to check is item which has 2 is equal to 3, condition becomes false. This break is ignored. Notice here that the print statement was written below it. Sometimes you can, or usually you can normally also write it in front of it. No problem with that. If it's a single line of code, you can write in front of it. If it can contain multiple lines, then you make sure you write it below it with the correct indentation. Since this is a single line, we have just written in front of it. Then we say print item. This print does not belong to if because it is indented just below it. But it is belonging to for loop because it is indented inside the for loop. Wonderful. Else print finally finished. This else will execute when the range condition becomes false. So when I reach to the range number 7, This says, hey, 7, I wanted you to just make 6. So condition becomes false. The for loop exits and the else statement is executed. Hence, the print statement when it says final. So a looping statement will continues to cycle until we satisfy a condition here. That's loops for you. Then let's check out this cheat sheet one more time, and we have something called functions now. What do we mean by functions? Functions are a way of executing a block of code automatically which performs multiple different functions. Okay, so we say function, it's going to perform a certain set of instructions that has a purpose, that has a meaning. The reason we use functions is to make code repeatable, make code reusable, sorry. So we can reuse the code and again. So if you are performing an addition function, you don't want to perform addition every single time. You just write a function and pass it a value so it performs the calculation. Or you want to calculate quadratic equation, you don't want to write that same equation 100 times within your code. You just create a function and pass it the ABC value, it repeats itself. Where every time you want to perform quadratic operation, you call the function, pass it ABC, the calculation is done. That's what we call reusable code. So we use or create function by something called define, DEF. Function name, any name is valid as long as there is no space and it does not uses any reserve word or keywords. Like the if word, like the else word, like the for word, these are known as reserve words. Words used by Python for its own purpose. So better not use them for variables or function names. Again, spaces between variable names is again no big no for Python. So we use the def, means define my function, bracket start, bracket close, and a colon. Colon indicates that this is a block, the code still continues. So then we give indentation. Again, indentation is quite important. Indentation indicates that this line is now actually part of a bigger line. Underneath this comes, right? It's like following a tree structure. So now we write a statement. Any statement, any logic, any loop will go here. This will create my function. This is known as function declaration. We have declared our own function. Now to use this function, we do something called function calling. Means we call the function by its own name. So my function is my name. So I use that function and my function is called here. Same syntax, same name, same signature, same spelling without any space. So what this is going to do, it's going to call this function and print this line. Remember, we can call this function hundreds of times. Now we don't need to declare again and again. So I can write my function 10 times. It's going to execute, perform this statement or execute this statement 10 times. That's what reusability means. So you can create any function using this syntax. Make sure you give a colon with this definition and then indentation for whatever the statements come inside it. This is how you create functions. Easy peasy. Let's talk about something called file handling. File handling means being able to handle external files with Python. This is very important if you are going to in advanced programming, you're going to data analytics, you want to create code that automates something, you want to read external data. So we will be doing something called reading external files. To do that, we use with open and a file name. Okay. R means it's supposed to be readable. Encoding depends on what type of encoding you're using. As a file, so this means that we write opening of this as a file and then we're going to read it using a for loop. Do note there's an indentation here indicating this for loop actually is belonging to this syntax. And again, there's a colon meaning that this statement is still continuing. There's certain lines that precede it that are part of this single line. For example, print has no colon, nothing. So that means there's nothing preceding or there's no code that is part of a print line. So if you use if, there is a colon, meaning that there's a line part of it. So there's a specific reason why we use colons at certain points and where we don't use colons at all. Okay, so here there's a colon means, hey, there's some part of line that will come below it with a correct indentation that is actually part of this line. So with open, we provide a file name, we provide an argument called R, we provide an argument called encoding is equal to UTF-8, all comma separated, do keep in mind on that. Then for, again, line is a variable name in file. So now we are reading this file. So this file actually is also a variable. So what we have done now is we have told it, hey, open this file and save the content of this file in this variable. Okay, just like the variable we declared here. Here we have provided the data directly in Python. This time we are reading a file and saving that file's content in a variable. Same way. And then now we're going to iterate through all the file data by using a for loop. Again, a new variable, dummy variable, this is called. And then we're going to say in file. So go and read everything inside the file line by line. It's going to read the line by line code, and then we can print it, we can operate on it, we can do whatever evaluation we want to do on those files. Also note print has a further indentation because print actually belongs to the for loop. There's a colon here, so if anything proceeds to a colon, it needs to have indentation. One line, one space would also work fine. One space, two space, but this indentation is quite important in Python. So this is how you read a file in Python. Easy peasy, right? Wonderful. Let's talk more about arithmetic operations. What kind of arithmetic operations I can perform? So if I have data, how do I work with that? Well, this is a standard setup. If you have done basic mathematics, you know that we can do plus. So meaning we have a variable called result is equals to 10 plus 30, or any two variables can also be done the same way. It's going to do the addition. Similarly, subtraction is going to do the subtraction. Whatever is the result of this subtraction will be assigned to result value. We can do multiplication, we can do divide, we can do integer division, and we can do a modulus, which will calculate the remainder. So 2 divide by 25, and then whatever is the remainder will be returned. So this is different from division. Division calculates the actual division. 4 divided by 16, the answer is given here. This will give us the remainder, not the actual answer. So 2 divided by 25 is like 2012, right? 12.1, I believe. So here the 0.1 or that remainder value is returned to us. So this is quite useful sometimes. Then we have double steric as well. Okay, so 5 double steric 3 becomes 1 to 5. It calculates the power sign. So this becomes arithmetic. So you can use arithmetic between variables, variable and value, and value and variables. So do remember that these are standard arithmetic operations that you can perform. But then I have something called plus and equal sign as well. What are plus and equal sign? Well, let me explain. Plus and equal sign are just standard operations that we perform. So when you use a single equal, this becomes an assignment operator. This means that, hey, assign the value of 0 to this variable called counter. This is called assignment operator. When we use plus equal to, this now means that take the current value of counter, add it with 10, and then assign it back to the counter. Okay, so it basically means the current value of counter, add 10 to it. Okay, so this becomes a shorthand operator of plus equal to. Similarly, there is a minus equal to, multiply equal to, divide equal to as well. So all these operations have these shortened versions. So they will take the current value, add this number, and then assign it back to itself. Similarly, counter is equals to 0. Now counter becomes 0. We again overwrite the previous value of counter. We can also say counter is equals to counter plus 10. So read the current value of counter, add 10 to it, and then assign it back to the counter. So this line exactly does this thing. Read the current value of counter, add 10 to it, assign it back to the counter. Hence the counter value becomes 10. Voila. Similarly, all string can be used assigned to this equal operator, and message is equals to this can be assigned. So what this now means is that take the message which has value part 1, and if I write message plus equal to part 2, means take the current value of message, add plus 2 to it. Now because we are using string here, string when used with plus basically does not do mathematical calculation because it's a string. It contains number of characters. So it's just going to join two strings together. Hence we're going to get part 1, part 2 result. This is plus equal to operator. Then we have something called f string. This is from Python 3.6. So for example, if we create a variable called website, which has a quick reference, do note now we have used the single quotations here. You can use single quotation or double quotation to create a string in Python. All okay. Then we say f hello, comma, website. Now what we're doing is we are saying that print the value of this website after the word hello in this place. So this is known as a placeholder, and it's gonna, this f is indicate that I'm gonna replace certain value here. So what's happening is that it's gonna print hello quick ref me, but the way we're doing it, that the word quick ref me is actually saved inside a variable. So if you want a string to be replaced with a variable name, we use curly brackets and the variable name, okay, with the f word preceding it. It's not F word that you usually use. It's a normal F word. Okay. So this indicates that, hey, I have a string. Replace this placeholder with the value of website. And the F indicates that you're supposed to do that. Capish? Let's move on. Same goes for the number as well. So if you want to print any variable number with a string, so we use the F word again, F letter again, not the F word. Let's just differentiate again. This is not good. So we say inverted quotations number. So I want the value of number to appear first, then plus 10 is equals to, then again I want the value of number and plus 10. So it's going to do this output. So it's going to say number value is 10 plus is equals to, take this number, add it with the integer value and return me the answer. There's a better way of doing it, but the latest version now does this way, which is like a little bit scary. Okay, well, that concludes the basics getting started of Python. So I hope you understand the basic cheat sheet, and it's quite easy. Then follow along. If you want me to make more videos on this, explaining more detailed concepts and advanced concepts, let me know in the comments. Of course, where else would you write the comment? So put the comment down. How do you find this? Was this useful or just completely crap? And I will try to make more. Anyway, Dr. Shan signing off.